morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids, and welcome to season 4 and episode number 58, 9 of the True North Eager Beaver 50. Let's say 59 of the True North Eager Beaver Interview Project, a series of extended chats with interesting Canadians who have things to say about which you should be aware. Today, Kids and Cubs, recording day is Thursday, September 26, 2024. I'm not sure what day we are going to broadcast this, so I can't tell you what the weather's going to be like. Hopefully, it's a beautiful day in your neighborhood. I'm your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, hey. And with me, as always, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly, looking very nice and blue, I must say, sir.
Thank you.
A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and CanadianTarot.com. Mr. Grizzly, how's your mental health this evening?
I'm tired. I'm really tired. It's been a long day.
We've seen a lot of each other today.
Well, I've done almost 8 hours in the studio today.
Oh my!
Yeah. So I'm tired. You know, between this podcast, other recordings for this, recordings for the books I'm narrating, and Mademoiselle Fox's podcast. It's been a long day of production and recording, so I'm tired. I'm not gonna lie.
Understandable. Things are going well over here. Also, it's been a long, productive day. But this I don't mind doing because it's going to be a treat.
Oh, indeed.
Cubs, we have a return guest here at the Beaver Lodge. So if you've been following us for a while, you'll probably recognize this fine gentleman. And if you're new to us since he's been here, you'll be happy that you stuck around.
Yes, indeed.
Our guest happens to live on Vancouver Island, if he hasn't moved since we last spoke to him, and has been a high school history, social studies, civilizations, careers, and leadership teacher for at least 33 years.
He knows what he's talking about.
Yes. He always has the perfect quote to go with a story or whatever anecdote he's telling or whatever bit of information that he's giving to us. And we've invited him because he's a kid who is very, very politically and civically engaged as well, and happens to know a thing or two about the BC political scene. And since we are in the election period in British Columbia, we figured we'd have a little focus British Columbia today and find out what's going on in that neck of the woods because, well, some of us are a little far away and we don't get all the news and don't know all the developments that happened in the meantime. If we just get, as we say in French, les grandes lignes, the big headlines, but don't know how things came to be. So kits and cubs, please do put your paws up and give a big round of applause to our friend, Tim Krutzman. Welcome back to the Beaver Lodge.
Boy, you guys are setting the bar high for me today. Holy dynamite.
Oh, no. Listen, the last talk that we had was so engaging because you just had like this little snippet or a factoid or a quote or something that would just bring it all together all the time, or just drive a point home, or provide some clarity. So, I mean, that
I appreciate
you
that.
have a
That's nice.
filing cabinet up there, and you know how to pull things out, and it's absolutely fantastic, fascinating. It makes for great conversation.
I appreciate it. And Mr. Grizzly, I'm so sorry that we have this 3-hour time difference.
That's all good. It's all good.
If
Now-
we were on a flat earth like some of the BC conservatives think, we could be doing this at the same time. Sorry.
Starting with the shade. Oh boy. Okay.
That's good. That was good.
That was good. Tim, I need to ask, because I asked Mr. Grizzly as well, and we have our focus on mental health on our show. How's your mental health this evening?
Mental health, 9 out of 10.
9 out of
that's
10?
great. Good stuff. I like to hear that.
Yeah.
That's good.
Just met this wonderful lady, and we're hitting it off. And so that's really cool.
Yes.
And the girls are doing fine. The oldest in third year university and the youngest in her grade 12 year. She just got her grad dress last weekend in Victoria.
Okay.
And life's good.
Awesome.
I am so happy for you. We love here at the Beaver Lodge.
Yeah, it's awesome. Cheers.
Yeah, that's the smile. Okay, yeah.
So where do we begin today? Do we talk about Mr. Rustad and how his behavior is kind of, well, let's not forget that. I mean, just he's got some strange theories. Number one, but it's the way he sat and listened intently to Guy Felicella, and then turned around and basically denied everything he said to him.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of background before we get there, just sort of give a lay of the land of how what BC is and sort of how we got here.
Sure. I don't know if you've ever heard the expression, but BC's been referred to as the land of the lotus eaters. I don't know. It's from an Alfred Lord Tennyson poem, and there are places on Earth that have this wonderful plant, and it's good for you apparently. But it's where the roaming mariners eat the lotus and leave reality and their worldly cares behind. So the perception of British Columbia has often been Birkenstocks with wool socks and plaid shirts and shorts, and there's also the reputation of the second largest industry in British Columbia is the marijuana. I think it produces about 14 billion in revenue a year, so it's second to forestry. So there's that reputation, and as my Uncle Paul in Ontario, the center of the universe, likes to say, the left coast. Now, the irony of calling British Columbia the left coast is that it's quite right.
Especially in the interior, correct? The interior is like...
Yeah, that was one of the questions that Eager Beaver asked me. And the NDP have traditionally a stronghold on Vancouver Island. The Bible Belt, Abbotsford, Fraser Valley area is generally the hotbed of conservatism, BC Liberals, Social Credit, now the BC Conservatives. The North is often a toss-up one way or the other. And then, of course, it's a dogfight in the Metro, the GVA. There's 52 seats in the greater Vancouver area, and that's where it's going to be won or lost.
Right.
And a little bit of the context, though. The last the poll in the 2020 election, the last election, the Conservatives had 2% of the vote. And the last time that they were of any consequence in a provincial election was the 1940s and 50s. Prior to that, and they had actually been the governing party of British Columbia for much of the 20th, the beginning of the 20th century, and then the Liberal Party was during the Great Depression, and then after the Great Depression. In the 40s and 50s, the Social Credit grew out of the conservative liberal coalition that had been formed to keep the CCF out of power. So when we hear Kevin Falcon today talk about I'm going to make this sacrifice and shut the United Party down so that we keep the NDP out. This is not a new phenomena in British Columbia.
Okay.
I think British Columbia are the two solitudes. There's the two. There's the left and the right, and it depends on how the wind blows. So when you're looking at polls today, there are many people in British Columbia, including NDPers, that have said in recent surveys they're not happy with the job the government's done on the economy, for instance. Well, I think if you're an incumbent in Canada right now, you got a target on your back, and it's a tough road to hoe. It was all the way through to the early 1990s that the BC Liberal Party had actually existed as an ideological party. It had split from the Federal Liberals in 1987, not on ideology, not on anything other than they wanted to control membership fees. So that's it. They were going to, so they split constitutionally in 1987. Art Lee was the leader at the time, and they became a provincial wing and a party unto its own. And then when the social credit glibly went through the 1991 election campaign, do you guys remember at all the debate that Gordon Wilson was actually standing in between Rita Johnston and Mike Harcourt? In 1991 at the debate, and I was in a pub downtown Victoria watching with other liberals, and we roared because Wilson said, as Johnston and Harcourt were shouting at each other, he looks to his left, and then he looks to his right, and then he says, "This is why nothing ever gets done in the province of British Columbia. That's why you need to go with the BC Liberals." Now, unthinkably, he won 17 seats and gained second place in something like 30 other seats. And the Socreds were reduced. I think it was 6 or 8 is the number that sticks out in my head.
Okay.
And they were just reduced. Now, Gordon Campbell saw this as an in. And by the 1993 provincial convention, there was a vote. Prior to that, there had been a vote of non-confidence in Gordon Wilson. And at the 93 leadership convention, the three Gordons ran: Gordon Campbell, Gordon Wilson, and Gordon Gibson. And Gibson was dyed-in-the-wool liberal. Wilson was a progressive, ideological liberal. And then you had Gordon Campbell and social credit. And basically, you looked at a hijacking of the BC Liberal Party by the social credit layabouts. And I'll never forget standing behind Stan Hagen. I admit that I campaigned for him in 1996 to be the Liberal nominee. And as it was announced that he had won the nomination, he said, "Oh, I'm glad I wore my Tory blue today." And that was quite the eye-opener for a younger fellow, and a real reality check that what British Columbia was all about, that either you were on the right or you're on the left. In my view, I'm not saying I'm right, but in my view, I don't see and have never really seen, other than maybe 91, any real room for a middle of the road party.
Okay.
I can't see it. It's either you're with the socialist and the NDP, or you're with the business community and the whatever you want to call it. I predict that the BC Conservatives will be the right's alternative for at least the next 10 to 20 years. They will never go back to a BC Liberal, though. In fact, as far as I know, the BC Liberals got the rights to a whole bunch of different names: Liberal, BC Liberal Party, Liberal Party of British Columbia, so that no one could ever use it again. And I have some inside information on that, and I can't reveal my source, but it's really reliable that they've done that. And I just don't see it ever being anything but, in the old days, CCF and a coalition of the right, or now the NDP and a coalition of the right. And that's how we've essentially arrived to how we got here today. Now, your further question is to, how did a guy kicked out of the BC Liberals, or I'm pretty sure they were united at the time that he was kicked out.
Yeah.
I think. Am I right on that? I can't remember.
It was kicked out in 2022.
Oh, then they were still the BC Liberals at that point. Yeah. He was kicked out because he had made some kind of nonsensical posts about climate change, that it was more of a what's the actual quote here? Climate change is real, he said. It's just not a crisis. It's not an existential threat. It is something that's real, but not really a current threat. And that's not something that we teach in the schools in British Columbia. He also is against SOGI, which is a resource package for helping young trans and LGBTQ students through the system where they have experienced bullying. And the Conservative Party has mentioned that they want to pull that. They also mentioned they want to go in, and Rustad has said that himself, they want to go into BC public schools and weed out books that are negative influences on children. And the list goes on and on. That's why he was kicked out by Falcon. And I think the other thing that worked in Rustad's favor is the party rebranding. The Liberals did not handle that well, and there wasn't what you would call a complete party buy-in to that process. And the rebranding, in my view, and in the view of many, did not go well. Mm-hmm. And a lot of voters in British Columbia, whether they like the term liberal or not, at least they could associate their right-leaning candidate to that political party. Mm-hmm. And there was identification issues over the last year with that party. So you combine that with being kicked out of the party by Falcon, and he's adrift, and he crosses the floor. Like, what else is he going to do, right? Sit as an independent, which is a tough road to slog. Right. As independent, you have less money for staffing and all of that. Right. Or you can become a member of a political party. And now I think they have official party status in British Columbia with 4 members. There may be a couple more that came since, but so he then ran for the leadership of the party. And given that he had been a minister in the government since 2013, I think, he well-connected individual. I don't find him terribly charismatic, but he certainly is well-connected. And I think that he and Eby I think it would be fun to watch them in a debate. They're 2 kind of uncharismatic but know their stuff kind of people. That and then you've got Sonia Fursteneau, I think the Green Party leader, that could throw a wrench in the NDP getting reelected.
Okay.
So that's kind of how he got to the place he did in the Conservative Party. Bottom line is, it really doesn't matter what you call the party. It doesn't matter at all. You could call it the Purple Party. At the end of the day, there is a room for the right of center coalition in British Columbia. And whatever name that takes, it doesn't matter. It's inconsequential. And we saw that, right? It's the SoCreds, it's the BC Liberals, it's now the Conservatives.
Yeah.
And who knows what in 20, 30 years kind of thing. But it's later on, I've got some stories about some of the, Amor de Cosmos and other kind of choice stories over the years that help indicate that we are quite a unique province politically.
To say the least, yes.
You said earlier that Sonia Fursteneau could cause some problems to the NDP. In what way?
Vote splitting.
Okay.
Yeah. Now she's at 10% in the polls, and the NDP are 43 and the Conservatives are 44. What would that look like without a Green Party? And by the way, I'm not suggesting at all not to vote Green. That's not what I'm about. Or I believe more political parties is a good thing. I'm just saying that. And by the way, let me just add one last thing, that the wackos that are in the Conservative Party right now, and there are wackos, there are people that in that party that believe the earth is flat, and that 5G is a threat to lives, and on and on. And that's fine, but they're a new party, and give them about a decade and they'll just be they'll work and iron those folks out, and they'll get really good at the optics of their politics as the years go on, which is why I think they'll be the right alternative for a number of years. As far as the Green, it just depends on how far that 10% is going to go. I mean, as you know, vote distribution, you could get 10% in a federal election, but you're only getting 1,000 votes in 337 ridings, right? So
Right.
It's where it's spread. On here in my riding that I'm in, Ronna Ray Leonard is our incumbent NDPer. She's as a federal Liberal, I can say that she's done a good job. I'm quite impressed with the job that she's done. She's represented us well, but I'm seeing a lot of green signs on the on not just on roadways, on people's front lawns, and that to me is a true indicator of support if the signs are on someone's lawn as opposed to a highway. You know,
Right.
So that's what I mean. That when I say cause problems, I don't mean that it's necessarily a negative thing. It's just that if you are on the left of the spectrum and you worry about SOGI and climate change and women's reproductive rights, the Conservative Party at this time is not the party for you. And they could get in if the Greens divide the vote on the left.
That's a little disturbing because we all know that the federal Conservative Party, where they stand and when it comes to women's rights, to say the least, even if they're not always vocal about it and upfront, I mean, you do have their backbenchers who try and lob things into the mix constantly with 47 signatures so that they can stand up and present a bill.
Yeah.
Look, if they get in federally, women will lose the most. They will, to start with.
Yep. And they've been emboldened by politics in the States.
Yes.
And Rustad has adopted the common sense mantra, and he's aligned quite heavily with, what's his name?
Pierre Poilievre?
Yeah. Sorry. I mean,
I think that's the most excited anybody's ever been to hear his name on this show.
Ever.
Saying that name is like saying Voldemort in this house. We're Harry Potter fans.
You must not be named.
Yeah, so that's the context of where we got to today, and yeah, there it is.
All right. So from when I asked you, because for the Kids Cups, I normally don't send guests questions beforehand, but for stuff where I'm looking for some facts and want people to prepare and not just, do you know something off the top of their head, I give sort of general overall sort of subject areas because that I'd want to talk about so that our guests are not unprepared. How would I put it? I guess part of this is that part of it is like the little catty gossipy part of me, I guess. It's Rustad was part of Kevin Falcon's party.
Correct.
And then he got booted by Kevin Falcon.
Correct.
So where does Kevin Falcon say, now the party I booted you from 2 years ago, I'm going to fold it and join you? That's where like the needle comes off, because if you were so controversial that I booted you out of my party, why would I join your party? That's the part that I don't. And how awkward was that meeting, or was there a joint press conference? Was that smooth in any way? Because that seems like a real literal politics makes very, very strange bedfellows.
I don't know of any greater example of that expression. Certainly it's in the top 5 in Western democratic history, in my view. I watched that press conference. I graduated from Van College just like Kevin did. And I thought, oh, my Irish brother. Our school nickname was the Fighting Irish. Oh, brother, what's going through that head? And it was clear, and I've read from a number of sources that what I thought was happening, in fact, was happening. That the guy was in complete and utter angst about having to do this, and how he arrived at taking this Biden-esque, the province is more important than my premiership. Because here he is booting a guy out, and you have to know that would have been a very heated get out of the party. Look, John, sorry, we can't, the optics. And then now you're having to say, the very reasons that I've kicked you out, I'm okay with kind of now because we don't want the NDP to get in. I find that just such cynical politics. I get it from, when
at all costs.
At what cost, right? I mean, so now you are risking putting in a man that's going to make life more dangerous for trans and gay kids in schools. Knowingly doing that, knowingly putting in someone who will possibly adjust climate curriculum in the public schools, possibly change access for women's reproductive rights in the province. And there's other ways of doing it, by the way, other than just simply outlining it.
Yes, as Alberta's showing us.
As Alberta, yeah. So I part of me went, oh, my heart goes out to you, because you must be, I don't know what kind of humiliation that would have had to have taken to do that. But that would have had to have been an incredibly humiliating thing to do. Someone that you fired is now your boss.
Well, and Rustad was removed for suggesting online that CO2 emissions do not contribute to climate change.
Worse than that, he said nothing that human beings are doing is contributing to climate change.
I'm like, come on.
We need to change our behavior. In the year 2024, the leader of the provincial Conservative Party is saying we do not need to change our behavior.
Well, and let's add to the fuel to that fire of his ridiculousness. Recent comments from BC's Conservative leader John Rustad suggesting children could be expected to, in quotation, eat bugs as a means of combating climate change have drawn mockery from his main political rival.
They're eating the bugs. Bzz, 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 bzz. They're eating the ants.
I've heard this from I don't know how many people now. How many politicians have made this statement? You're going to make you start eating bugs.
Well, I think that even worse is when he said proof of school should be staying out of the lives of families and students is in the residential school system. He said that on
what?
Yeah, oh yeah. He has faced huge backlash from Indigenous British Columbians. So he was comparing the weeding of books out of libraries and SOGI and parents' rights, as he calls them, to the government of Canada taking children from their families in Canadian history. How you are comparing the protection of gay and trans students in a school to residential schools, I think is an absolute insult on so many levels.
Oh, yeah. Like,
wow.
How does he still have a job? I mean, really?
Wow.
Really?
I think that he has got a cadre of people that are propping up the entire party. And he has name recognition, and they're willing to pull a Mitch McConnell, who for all intents and purposes, basically said that he wanted to impeach or should have impeached, or that Trump was worthy of impeachment. But he forbade people to impeach Trump.
Yeah,
it could have changed it at that moment. So political expediency for people like McConnell is the same anywhere. And this is political expediency. And I don't know what Kevin Falcon got out of it. I'd be really curious to know, to be honest with you.
It doesn't seem apparent or obvious, right?
Like,
is he one of the ones that gets to run in a seat at least?
Yeah, right. But like, I get it. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Quid pro quo. That's how politics is done. Sure, no problem. I understand that, but I don't see anything happening here that would benefit Kevin Falcon.
No, but let me put it this way then. He's going to fold the party. he has the choice of the NDP, he has the choice of the Conservatives, and I would assume up until that point, or a couple of days before he decided to do that, that when he still thought he could be somewhat a viable party, there was a reason that he was competing against the Conservatives and not with them. Was there any rationale? Okay, I've got two ways I can go. I'm going to go to the guy that I know is going to make things worse, that I think is so bad I booted him out of my party. Yes, and he hasn't gotten better since. Clearly, yes. Or the other guys, because the other guys would be worse. In what way would the NDP be worse than the guy he booted a whole party run by? Because the guy had one seat and it was booted out of the caucus. Now he's got a whole party.
Well, what you're looking at in British Columbia is that the NDP, generally speaking, is the party of the worker or labor, and the whatever the name given to the right of center party is, generally speaking, the party of corporations or big business. And you can see it in policies like under the NDP up until 2001, you had to get hired for a minimum of 4 hours. And the BC Liberals came in and made it 2 hours. They made it so that an employer could hire you on 8 to 10 in the morning and then have you come back from 10 to midnight. Like, you know, and I think they lowered the working age to 14. Like the rules of employee relations change dramatically in British Columbia, depending on who the government is. Heck, in this province, in my riding, as you go off the connector onto the Inland Island Highway and you're driving down towards Victoria, about 4 kilometers down the highway is a sign on the right that says Ginger Goodwin Way. And what that means is it's a reference to Ginger Goodwin, a labor leader and anti-conscription advocate in the First World War, who was shot in the back by RCMP as they chased him up into the Cumberland Mountains. I tell you that story because when there's an NDP government, the sign's up. And when there's a BC Liberal or whatever you get on the right, the sign comes down. So you know who's in government by whether or not the Ginger Goodwin sign is up or not.
That's wild.
It's just like it's in many ways it's either or in this province. It's so frustrating, and so maybe the Greens. Sonia thinks that she could become the balance of power, and wouldn't that be nice? You know, maybe having a Rustad come in and try his stuff, and then Sonia says, no, we're going to defeat you. That might be a good thing for British Columbia. I don't know how you guys feel about minority governments, but I've always kind of appreciated them.
I like them quite a bit.
Well, I mean, I consider what did Lester B. Pearson do, right? Minority government. What did he get done? Oh, I don't know, 2 weeks vacation, 40-hour work week, EI, Canadian flag. What else did he bring us?
The Royal Commission on Bilingualism and Biculturalism was huge.
Yes.
You know, say what you want about a dweeby English kid, but he sure felt that it was his responsibility to find a place for Quebec and Canada. That was huge.
Don't forget, he brought it. He was the gentleman who solved the Suez Crisis Canal, if memory serves.
One of the major architects of NATO.
Yeah, yes, I was going to say major architect of NATO, because and the whole soldiers as peacekeepers was also his design. He got a lot done.
He got a ton done. Have you ever seen the photo in 1968 of 4 prime ministers in one photo? There was the Minister of Justice, Trudeau. There was the minister, what was John Turner at the time? I think he was undersecretary of something. And then Jean Chrétien was in the picture, and Pearson. It's a great photo. Have you ever seen it?
I think I have.
Okay, I'll get it and I'll send it to you guys. It's a really good picture if you're a liberal. The natural governing party. Did I say that out loud?
Well,
sorry.
but I mean, historically speaking, it has been more than anything else, right? I mean,
60% of Canada's history since 1867 has had a Liberal government.
there you go.
There you go.
Which may not sound like the majority, but that's a lot.
It is. It is.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Mr. Grizzly, we have a little clip of
Yep.
the premiere.
I have it working here.
All right.
Oh, perfect.
The leader of the Conservative Party has said some pretty alarming and bizarre things. And I saw an amazing video of him today where he says that he is taking a strong stand that he will not force children to eat bugs. In my experience, the challenge with children up to a certain age is preventing them from eating bugs. And then after that, it's kind of forcing them to eat vegetables. But I mean, here's something that John Rustad and I can agree on. So let's put a hand across the aisle about not forcing children to eat bugs. I do understand why he has to clarify his position on issues like this, given the remarkably weird stuff he's been saying.
All right. Now, I have thoughts about how he handled that. But Tim, since you're a guest at the Beaver Lodge, please go first.
I thought it was about as awesome as the way Trudeau handled that he can give a lesson on economics to Polyev even without security clearance. Did you guys say that in the House?
That was brilliant.
There was a bit of wit about Mr. Eby there. There was a bit of a bit of a charm that I didn't know fully existed. Because he is a professor of law, and he was executive director of the Human Rights Commission in British Columbia. So he's an academic, but there was a bit of humanity there, I thought, for sure.
He strategically worked in weird. You almost didn't notice it but it was there.
It was subtle.
It up and threw it in there. It was a little subtle. It's not like you didn't start off with, man, that was weird. You just throw it out and just one word at the end there mixed with a little couple of other things. But that one caught my ear right away.
Has anything ever gotten into the burr of Donald Trump than that word weird? That was Tim Wald's cash cow.
No kidding.
Oh man.
And I got to tell you, being on TikTok and getting the odd comment from the right and some of the hurtful, hateful things they say about Trudeau, I said, well, that's a weird thing to say.
Oh, that just drives them crazy, right? Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. So far in the campaign, it seems that I know that the BC Conservatives have been making some announcements, but it also seems based on how would I put it? I don't know if this guy was a prolific speaker back in the day, but it seems that the NDP so far just have this treasure trove of, let's look at this thing that John Rustad said or did, because it seems almost to be like a gaffe. It's not so much a gaffe a day because it's not John Rustad saying that, although one of his attempts to clean up on aisle 5 was not so great. But like in New Brunswick, it literally is the people making gaffes. When Blaine Higgs made the comment about, a dead liberal or whatnot, that's stuff that's coming out of his mouth now in real time. This is stuff that, Rustad has said in the past, and he probably still believes, but he's probably not trying to say out loud right now. But it's still coming back. But there seems to be a new revelation every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because my thought before going online with you folks was the NDP better milk this in this election for all it's worth and go with this and run with it for all it's worth, because in 4 years, the next election, the Conservatives will have their act together, or whatever that is called. They do not have their act together right now. And they're a new party that has this newfound success, and they're not really sure what to do with it. The idea of act like you've been there before is lost on them.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, Eby is going to have Eager Beaver, you're right. The Eby will have a field day over the next while till the 18th. Well, the election's on the 19th. I never count that though. To make these kinds of illusions, because they're all over the place. he's anti-vax,
Yeah.
right? Like he's anti-mandate, and to anyone
Okay.
out there that's anti-vax, I apologize, but it's
Well, here's the thing, right? He's anti-vax, but only after he got his initial 2-dose series and the booster. Now that he's safe, he's anti-vax.
just like Fox News.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just
I'm just sitting there, girl.
well,
I
I
actually can't wait. I can't wait to see the debate.
oh, it's going to be a shit show.
That is going to be.
If he's as charismatic as I've seen in the clips, is there a little bit? Is there like a your weird Uncle John's at the Thanksgiving table speaking again thing?
Okay, so I'm watching a number of news stories in prep for this on John Rustad, and one story was about his rise, and they followed him around False Creek area, and he says he loves connecting with the people, and then it's him taking pictures, and then the reporter says he takes pictures of any stranger he can wherever he goes, and I just thought,
that's weird.
Okay, on one hand, that could be really nice. On the other hand, that could be really weird.
Yeah.
Does he just walk up to people and say, "Can I take your picture?" You know?
Hey, you look like somebody who's conservative. Can I take your picture?
It gives me the old creepy. It puts the lotion on its skin, or it gets the hose again. Silence of the lambs.
This will be the NDP's last chance to do this, and if they're still doing it in 4 years, then wow,
yeah,
then that party is in real trouble. The Conservatives, wow, you know.
We got another clip here. It's Mr. Rustad. It's a short one, but talking about the bugs.
The new plant was built in Ontario, I think in the Ottawa area. This plant produces 40,000 tons of bug protein for human and animal consumption. 40,000 tons of bug, and there's a second plant that's now in the process of being built. We should not be expecting our kids to eat bugs. The new plant was built.
So where there's a plant here in Ottawa? I've not heard of this.
There is not in Ottawa, but in London. There's a massive cricket processing facility that's coming online in London, Ontario. This was announced on July 1st, 2022. The company hopes to produce 13 million kilograms of cricket protein annually, selling mostly to the pet food market, primarily. At full capacity. Pardon?
There wasn't any indication that this was going to be on the trays of kids in schools?
It does not seem so.
Okay.
There's cricket. Well, yes, there is the cricket powder product that people can get, but I mean,
and this has been around since 2018.
But that I assume is targeted to adults who choose to wish to buy it on their own, if that is such their thing. But yeah.
I think that this is more of him trying to show that he wants to protect children and parents' rights when he, as a smokescreen for him not caring about gay and trans kids that are getting hurt in schools. And, okay, well, isn't that sweet? He doesn't want our kids to eat bugs. Was it really a problem, Mr. Rustad?
Yeah.
Where are our kids eating bugs? I can tell you, it wouldn't be in the CAF program at the high school I taught at.
Well, that's like the folks who go on about how they said there were litter boxes in classrooms for second and third graders in the closets in the cloakroom. And they said because the kids want to be furries, they want to be cats. Now, that is a completely made up story based on something factual. And the factual aspect was classrooms of schools in some states in the United States of America had kitty litter boxes in the cloakroom so that if they had a shooter drill or a shooter was in the building, the child could use the kitty litter instead of soiling themselves because they were so terrified of getting shot. So they took a story that was, there had legitimacy to it, and then ran with it and made up something completely different just to suit their narrative of, see how crazy the teachers are, see how crazy they are.
You mean kind of like saying that Haitians were eating cats and
Yeah.
dogs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just complete fabrication. You know,
I
and
gotta say, as a person that's watched every debate in on TV, whether Canadian or federal or United States, since gosh, I was a kid. When I heard him say that, I laughed as hard as she did.
oh, yeah.
I was like, "What the hell?" Like, what is?
Well, and then they fact checked him right away, which I thought was great.
Well, and then they said the news media, the fake news, should go and investigate, and everyone did. Everyone, and found that it was a lady that said on Facebook she thinks her cat was eaten by a neighbor, but the cat's name was Miss Missy. She was found in the basement the next day, and the woman went back online and apologized. There was never a cat that had been eaten.
Yeah.
We're in a new world.
Mm-hmm.
We have another clip because bugs seem to be a theme on the campaign.
Doing this, we've supported TransLink with $800 million over the last. That was a bug. It was a bee. I'm fine. Doing this.
That was
There
almost
is
as good as
there, isn't there?
almost good as Doug Ford when he ate the bee.
Well, somebody was posting it, so something like Doug Ford swallowed a bee, he won. David Eby got stung. He's gonna win. I don't make the rules. The bees have voted. Apparently.
Oh man, that's awesome.
It's like that octopus that was like picking, was it for the NBA for March Madness?
Yes.
They put the two teams in the it's like the bees have chosen, and the bees are always right. I have one more here for you here, Mr. Grizzly. Again, John Rustad, but this one on the anti-vax part. This is a comment he made in July of this year, according to the BC NDP, when he met with an anti-vax group that is suing Dr. Bonley Henry.
Just waiting for it to load. For some reason, it's taking its sweet time. Oh,
So-
yes. We showed this the other day.
Yes, we did. I just want to re-show it because
No problem. I think it's in an airport somewhere.
Yeah.
By the looks of it.
Some clips are just gold.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is that.
I had a conversation with Dr. Bonnie Henry, and then realized that, wait a second, something doesn't seem to be quite right with this, especially when we got into the mandates on vaccines. Now, I've had 3 shots of the vaccine. I wish I hadn't, quite frankly. That's one of the things that's changed in my thinking. The so-called vaccine, the COVID mRNA shots. When I talked to Bonnie Henry about it, I started to realize that it wasn't so much about trying to get herd immunity or trying to stop the spread, but it was more around shaping opinion and control on the population. I had a conversation with Dr. Bonnie Henry.
Okay, so there's 2 things in that. One, he doesn't say what it is that actually changed his mind. And he doesn't say what it is about his conversation with Bonnie Henry that made him come to that realization. Just, I had the conversation, it changed my mind. And after that talk, I came to the realization it was about population control and shaping opinion. What happened? Based on what? The 2 things, it's like listening to a sentence in German and never getting the freaking verb at the end of the sentence.
I think it's an incredibly hypocritical thing to say that you think that the mandates were an attempt to control people while you're also saying you're going to go into schools and take out books that are inappropriate, and you're going to get rid of a program that's saving children's lives in the school because you don't want the schools to have control over those kids. The double standard of that way of thinking, I don't comprehend it at all.
Sadly, irony is dead.
That's the first thing I thought when he said mind control or controlling people's opinion. It's like, well, okay. At some point, we as Canadians have to either accept that our government, whether it be provincial, municipal, or federal, is working in our interest, or we live a life of conspiracy where we accept nothing as protecting us. And I can't fathom living the latter. No. It makes no sense to me. I get it that there's going to be people like Mayor Adams who are going to bilk the Turkish government for benefits, like he's suspected of doing. It's a suspected. But to think that our government, the federal government under Trudeau, or a provincial government under, and it was the Liberals brought in Soji as well, by the way, the BC Liberals.
Yeah.
The idea that a government is out to control the masses. Do I sound naive? Because 1984 is all about that, isn't it? But I just don't think that Mr. Trudeau's initiatives during the pandemic were an attempt to control the masses. You know, it was, in my view, as humble as it may be, was to keep this country solvent, to keep us safe. Anyway.
If anybody's trying to control the masses, it would be big tech. Big tech. Because they have more to gain from it. Right? I mean, look, and we see big tech doing outrageous things all the time and getting away with it. What was Cambridge Analytica on Facebook? We've got Elon Musk buying Twitter with Russian and Saudi money. And now it's X, and I mean, that's just a shit show. So if anything, it's big tech that wants to control us. Politicians, some of them are in the pocket of big developers.
And then there's AI.
Yeah.
That has another issue.
Was it a buddy of mine said to me about a year or two ago, might have been longer, he says, he says, I'm 75 years old. So he says, I'm done with voting. I don't give a shit anymore. He goes, they're going to do whatever they want. He says, I'm on my way out. He says, I do not envy anybody on their way in. I said, yeah, I know. I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. He goes, it's a different world from when I first, 50 years ago when I came to Canada, 55 years ago when I came to Canada at the age of 20. There was, glorious opportunity. He says, and don't get me wrong, this is still the greatest country in the world, as far as I'm concerned. He's traveled all over the world. He lived in the UK. He spends his winters in Florida. Still, he's like, I'm Canadian as the day is long. He says, and it's still a great country and there's still great opportunities here, but it's not getting easier. It's getting more difficult by the day. And that needs to change.
Yeah, my advice in that situation would be to do the following. Pick one thing. I think what happens is that we get overwhelmed with the sheer immensity, the enormity of the problems that we face in the world, that when you get to 75, you think you've done your time. And this man sounds like he did. Like he put in his time to help build the country.
Yeah.
You're like, you know what? I'm out. If you pick one thing, you can find and summon that energy from somewhere to do that one thing. Whether it be animal rights or women's rights or climate change or even just coaching community soccer. It doesn't matter. Like, pick one thing, find that one thing, because I honestly believe that's what gives life meaning. I worry about people that, and I don't mean any disrespect to the gentleman because I can understand his thoughts, but my intent is to give a shit until the day I die.
Oh yeah, I hear you.
That is just my intent. And I can't imagine. it's hard not letting the system get the better of you. It's hard to beat City Hall but you don't get. I always use Mothers Against Drunk Driving as an example. It took them 40 something years to get to 0.05, and they want it to be 0.00. So they still have a ways to go, and yet they're still fighting the fight. And they're fundamentally different people in the organization than there were in the 1980s when it came in, right? So they're that kind of thing. You just gotta, and the other thing to do is go for walks, play your tennis, play some golf, take a holiday once in a while, watch some sitcoms, and then when you get yourself refreshed, then go fight the fight again.
And that's the key to it, right? Because it's easy to fall into the trap, a never-ending cycle of misery and pain and anxiety and despair because you see nothing but badness all the time. And it can get to us. It can affect our mental health. But you can choose to say, and to hell with it, and just ignore it for a little bit. Walk away from it, take a break, because you need to do that to remain sane. And then come back refreshed and rejuvenated, and then take it on again. And in his case, I mean, when I say he says, I'm glad I'm on my way out, he means that, he's nearing the end of his life. He realizes this. But the last couple of elections, he was a lifelong progressive conservative. The last couple of election cycles, he's voted NDP because he says he can't vote Liberal and absolutely is not voting for the Reform Party with the name Conservative in their title. Because as far as he's concerned, they're not conservatives. They're regressive, not progressive. And I'm a conservative, but he believes in programs like UBI. He believes that we should put people in houses because it costs us more money to keep people on the street. It costs us more money to not give them a universal basic income. He knows this. He knows fiscal policy. So he's just so frustrated with it all. He just says, I don't think I'll vote in the next election. I was like, really? He goes, yeah, I just don't think I will. He's a bit, he's got a full life. Don't get me wrong. He does have a full life, lots of friends, and he keeps busy. But
tell him for me to go and spoil the ballot.
Oh yeah, I did suggest that.
I did that in one election in the early 90s where I just went in and I spoiled the ballot because I said, damn it, I'm going in.
Yes.
I have a right to go in. I'm going in.
Well, I did tell him that.
For any of these people. So I put an X on the ballot and then it counted in the Times Colonist in Victoria. The next day is one of 8 spoiled ballots.
Wow.
And there's my vote, I said.
Yeah.
But when you go in and vote, you know that your polls are based on your area that you live in. So you see your neighbors and voting is such a, what do you guys think about having a national holiday for federal or even provincial elections?
Completely agreed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Something we both agree with and have
with an incentive to vote, mandatory voting with an incentive, not a punishment.
Because in Australia, it's mandatory voting since 1914 or something like this in Australia. So their voter turnout is usually around 95%. Anything below that is shockingly low. Yeah, well, it's your civic duty.
It is.
It's your right. It's not a privilege. In this country, it is your right. Yeah. But it's also your civic duty. And you should do it in every election. You should vote. And even if you just spoil your ballot, at least you've spoken up. Your voice has been heard. You've counted. And I think mandatory voting and a holiday for a federal election, day off.
Yeah.
Because
provincial as well.
And provincial as well, yes.
Yep.
But I think it should be because so many people these days are working 2-3 jobs. Or a single mother's got to work an extra shift and then go pick up the kid. How do I have to? Well, you're entitled to get 4 hours off to go vote. Yeah. Well, guess what? I'm working a double, and I need the money, and I know I can take the time off, but it's going to make for a really sticky situation at work if I do this.
Yeah.
It's not realistic right now.
I just want to say 2 quick things about that. First, I want to give credit where credit is due. One of my colleagues, Roger Vernon, he came up with the idea, or he said, have you heard of this, Tim? And I said, yeah, I have, but tell me more. And so he was talking. So Roger, that's where I got that idea in my ear, was from Raj. So kudos to him. The second one is the day should be like a celebration.
Mhm.
Like there should be this celebration of democracy. There should be community events like there are on July 1st.
Mhm.
Right.
Election Canada should be given more money to do something in that regard. More education in the schools on how to vote. I mean, we do that in Socials 10, right?
Right.
In the brick and mortar. I actually had a ballot box, a wooden
Right.
ballot box with the Elections Canada logo on the side, and I had the Elections Canada cardboard partition, and I had a mock ballot, and I told them right from the time that you enter the rec center or the polling station to the time that you go to put the ballot in the box is one of the most sacred moments in the life of a Canadian citizen.
Mhm.
And it's one that you shouldn't take lightly. It's one that is it's a right that many people on this planet do not have an access to. You know, I mean, when they were doing the referendum in the eastern part of Ukraine, the Russian military was at gunpoint walking the people to the polls.
Right.
You
Yes.
know, we don't have that.
No.
Your ballot, you don't even have to tell your partner what your ballot said, right?
Exactly.
And it
Right.
is such a you know, I asked my Uncle Paul about it, who his father, my grandfather, fought in Europe in the Second World War, and his grandfather, my great grandfather, fought in World War I. And I said, what do you think about people having soccer tournaments on Remembrance Day? Isn't that offensive? It's connected. I'll try and connect it. And he said, you know, that's how I used to think, but now I think that those men that died would be happy
Mhm.
that there was freedom to play those
Yes.
games and to and that. And so I think by extension, I think the veterans would or not the veterans, those that had passed, if we were to ask them if we had that chance, they would say, we want you to vote. We want you to, because what is it in Flanders Fields, from this to the torch shall be passed.
And from alien hand, we throw you the torch for years, to hold up on high.
Well, on high. I should know that off by heart. I apologize, but
That's okay.
it's our responsibility. It's a moral, ethical responsibility. It is a birthright, and I know that people will say my vote doesn't matter, and I know in ridings like Kelowna that's going to go 75% conservative. What do you say to the 25%? Well, ideally, you'd say that the man or the woman or the person that won with 75 on the conservative side would take up your case as your MLA if you ever had need, and the same at the federal level. I know that isn't always the case. I always had good relations with my conservative MP, John Duncan, over the years, to the point where we still are friendly when we see each other. And as long, yeah, your vote counts just by simply making it. So you're part of the larger good, so that your vote karmically counts. I still believe in that. The vote karmically counts.
Mm-hmm.
It just counts.
Yeah, I can see that. But I think that people don't appreciate, and maybe in this era where parties are doing whatever the hell they want, regardless of public opinion, matters a little less.
Mm-hmm.
But from election to election, like even in a Kelowna, which goes 75% conservative, if the next time it goes 55, that's a 20-point drop. It does send a message. You still don't get your person. You still get a conservative. But it does let the party know that, in this particular area, people are not as satisfied or happy with the party as it was. Like this now, they may choose to disregard that. That's the party's deal. But you've done your part in communicating it. So it's cold comfort. Because, but it is, you can still send a message.
Yeah, we'll take a look at Vancouver Quilchena. Gordon Campbell's riding, and then it became Christy Clark's riding. It was an impenetrable BC Liberal wall. And on his first attempt, David Eby lost that riding. And on his second attempt, he beat Christy Clark.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, if you work at it and you have good ideas, I still believe that if you have good ideas and you're sincere, um, in this day and age of AI, I still want to hold on to my idealism that people, yeah.
I love your idealism, though. You know
People
why?
are
Because
essentially
it's
good, and
positive.
people.
I remember we ran student elections in at the school I taught at many years ago, and there was four young ladies that were the candidates for prime minister, and one was apparently going to be favored over all the others. Apparently more boys had a crush on her than the other three girls, so let's leave it at that. And one of the other candidates said, "What am I supposed to do, Mr. Krutzman? What am I supposed to do?" I said, "Give one hell of a speech during the all candidates meeting. That's what you do." And so anyway, she gives this speech that, in my view, to this day, is the single greatest speech I've ever heard a student give in a student election campaign. And there were 250 kids packed into the cafeteria for that. And you could have heard a pin drop during her speech in the cafeteria at lunch when this girl spoke.
Wow.
And she ended up winning by 120 votes. It was a landslide because she had the ideas, she was sincere, and she was a single mom at the time.
Wow.
And now she's just this incredible woman with kids and a happy life, and just she works for a nonprofit, running a nonprofit in London now. And she came up to me after and said, I guess ideas in a speech can make a difference, Mr. Krutzman. I appreciate that. And it did. So I've always thought that, of course, you got to get the message out, right? I mean, Mr. Eby, how many people will see his clips of his wit and the humor that he brought, whereas a lot of British Columbians are going to get focused on the economy. It's the economy, stupid, and not even think about SOGI and women's rights. And that's why Trump got elected in 2016. It's because the economy. He's better at handling the economy. Well, we don't know that.
He's been bankrupt 7 times.
Rustad is going to be better at running the economy when he's never been premier. He's never been the person in charge, right? And he's got a caucus full of people, or a party full of people that are thinking that 5G is going to kill us.
And the earth is flat.
And the earth is flat. Like where? And so I did some homework on this before Eager Beaver even invited me. That there are less than 2% of Canadians that are members of a political party.
Yep.
And so I did a TikTok once on in the last month on Lester B. Pearson. And I got the oldest picture I could find. It was of him about 20 years old at university, arms crossed, the whole world ahead of him, and a member of the Federal Liberal Party youth wing. And did he know that he was going to create NATO and peacekeeping? And probably not, but he had that vision. He had those ideas. He had that higher level thinking about it's more than me. It's more than just my party. It's country first. How do we make Canada a great country? Mitchell Sharp and all those types that were in politics to create a great Canada. And I'm sure that there were liberals, and in fact, I know for a fact there were federal liberals that were in scandals and things like that. But most Canadians, up until Poilievre, most Canadian politicians, I thought at the federal level, were certainly in it for the country. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too idealistic again, but I honestly think if we spoke and debated with ideas, Senator Ray Perot used to say, he was Pierre Trudeau's appointment to the federal cabinet because the Liberals had no one from Western Canada in 1980 in their caucus, in their cabinet. And he said to us young Liberals in 87 at our conference, never sell from an empty wagon. You want to be critical of the other parties, fine. But make sure you have something to sell when you go door to door. You're not just bashing the enemy. And that sat with us. That meant the world to hear that,
And unfortunately, right now we have a leader of the opposition who that's all he does. He's not sound. He's got 3-word slogans that are completely empty, meaningless, and they repeat them ad nauseum. And it's a style of politics. It's an American style of politics developed by a gentleman whose name escapes me right now. But when he said, "I wanted to change the world," and I did, I ended up making it worse because of the electioneering style he had.
Was that Karl Rove?
No, pre him, prior to him.
Cohn?
Might have been. No, not Cohn.
He didn't
No,
regret anything.
no,
Yeah.
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 He said, I did want to change the world, and I did, but I made it worse. Because he was like, stay on message, say as little as possible, don't talk about policy, don't talk about platform. Just give them simple slogans that the average person, the average Joe can understand, and you'll win. And he realized, I screwed up. Because, like Trumpenstein is in the building. We created him, and the monster is free.
All I really, really want from my leadership, whether it be my principal of my school or the leader of my country, is a humanity, a sense of humanity. And there was a brief moment at Mulrooney's funeral where Polyev started speaking in the snow with his wife outside. And I went, oh, Pierre, you're finally a human being. I'm being honest here. I actually was like, okay, I'm going to have to give this guy credit where credit is due. And then it went sideways where he started to bash the Trudeau government from 1980s for the same thing he's bashing this government, and that Mr. Mulrooney would not have approved of it. And it's like, why?
Yeah.
Why just one day take a break from the machinery and just be a human being?
It's impossible. He can't.
Yeah.
He can't take a break from it.
Yep. Tim?
Yeah.
Something that I've heard with regard to this campaign, because the Conservatives were at 2% last time and now they're doing better, is that they may not have enough of a machine under them in terms of getting out the vote for the ground game and not that part. I mean, financing, they have the money coming in, but they might not have the bodies yet, or at least the systems in place, the databases, the stuff like that. Is that something that rings true, or is that just some people that don't want them to win are using as wish casting to give themselves some comfort?
It may be a combination of the two, but I think there is a reality to the idea that they do not necessarily have that machinery in place. I'll give you an example. So when Turner ran in Vancouver Quadra in 1984, there was no way he was going to win that, they said. But he wanted to do it to show respect to BC because that's where he was from, went to university there, blah, blah, blah. So he runs. I helped on that campaign. And what we did is we had dozens of us who had these rented vans, and we went to known Liberal supporters, and we drove them to the polls. We took one mom to the polls who was making spaghetti dinner, and a couple of our young ladies stayed, finished the dinner, watched her 3 kids. We took her to the polls. We had a guy who was cutting his grass. I finished cutting his lawn for him so that we could get him in the van and get him to the polls. Do the Conservatives have that machinery in place right now? I don't think they do. I didn't even thought of that, Eager Beaver. I don't think they do. Now, would they bring over? And it depends, because a lot of the United candidates were left in the dark, and they heard about the folding of the party when we all did. That's how backed up that announcement was. So how much of the machinery that was in place for the United Party is going to be your staplers and your computers and all of that? How much of that is going over to the new party? And how is that going to work? And how are they picking their candidates? Are they going to be your traditional reform conservative types, or are they going to be the BC Liberals that were incumbents? I want to know what's going to happen with all the incumbents. Are they going to be automatically incumbents?
Well, see, that's the thing is I've heard that some of the BC United ones are folding in to the BC Conservatives, and some of them will get to run in certain seats, which means that some people from the BC Conservatives who looked like they were going to get seats or get nominations are not. So there could be some hurt feelings from that. From the BC United, I know that there's a group of them that are just running as independents, and some of them are incumbents, and some of them are incumbents who are actually liked. So when we talked about vote splits from the Greens, there might be some vote splits from former BC United, because they all had their papers signed, and they had over 60 candidates signed or something, and they were ready to go. And then all of a sudden, whoops, all this door knocking you've been doing for the last few months, if you had been confirmed as the nominee earlier, all that's just gone to pot now, right? Because we're not a party anymore. So a lot of them decided to run that way. So there's interesting dynamics that way. And then the other thing I heard is that in order to try and, because of the refund program, if you get at least 5% of the vote or something, if the party gets 5%, they get part of their expenses paid. It seems that there are certain BC United candidates that are still running under a BC United candidate banner because the party is hoping to get at least the 5%.
Okay, I hadn't heard that.
So that, whatever, I guess it could help it'll help it wind itself down financially. But the party's staying alive long enough to hopefully get 5% in the polls. So basically to take money again from the taxpayer.
Well, I mean, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. This is a transitional election.
Mm-hmm.
In the history of British Columbia, it's one of those transitional moments, and next time around they'll have their act together. So this is a chance for the NDP to get one more term in before they have, not that they won't be government in perpetuity, but the Conservatives will have their proverbial blank together the next time for sure. Mm-hmm. They'll have it all ironed out. They'll have a provincial head office. They'll have all of that stuff. It'll just take time.
Well, and if you look at, we've got a clip here that Mr. Beaver sent me of John Rustad answering a question.
Now, for the people listening at home, this is a BC NDP version of the clip, so it's
been toyed with a little bit.
It's been toyed with a little bit, but you're getting the general impression of how this press conference went.
You've recently made some comments about Dr. Bonnie Henry and the so-called vaccine and wishing you'd never had the shots. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what you think would have happened in BC if people didn't get the shots, and are you suggesting that everything would have been the same in terms of death and illness rates without widespread vaccinations?
So, thank you for that. And I see the NDP are attacking me about this, and I understand how they want to distract.
Do you believe the vaccine science?
So, look, clearly, in my opinion, what needs to be done in this province is we need to make sure that our healthcare system is good.
So, do you regret getting the vaccine, as said in that video?
So, like I say, the most important thing that we are focused on, and I think if you were to ask anybody around...
Do you mind explaining the circumstances around that video?
I'm sorry, I haven't seen the video you're referring to.
You've recently made some comments about...
You were in it.
I haven't seen the video, the one that you
I haven't
were
seen
in.
You were in it. They were filming you saying stuff. Do you really have to see it?
And he never answered the question. Never answered a question. Yeah, I understand that the other party is saying things about me that I don't like. It's what you said, though.
So this is the first press conference that happens after you've said after the clip of that comes out, and you're going to be asked about it, and this is the answer you've not prepared.
I think he's, putting ideology aside, I think he's a good foot soldier. I think I think that he would toe party line, candidate solidarity when he was in with the BC Liberals, all that, and then that changed near the end. But I don't get confidence listening to him talk. I don't get premiership material. I get that more from Sonia, the Green Party person, than I do from him, to be honest. Yeah, that. Yeah.
It's that if that was supposed to be a presser to clean up, yeah, somebody didn't teach him how to use a map.
I don't know if anything could ever be as bad as Bob Skelly crying at his opening press conference, though. You remember that?
No, not at all.
Yeah, in the 1986 election, Bob Skelly gets up as the NDP leader, and he says, "All right, I'm here to now," and then he starts to get emotional, and he starts not hyperventilating, and he had to turn around from the camera because he was starting to cry, and out of nervousness, I think. My heart ached for the guy.
Yeah.
But he turned back and said, "Okay, can I start again?" Well, the election was over right then and there. That was the panelist view. That was my view. How old would I have been? 21. And I was sitting there, man, this guy's done.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you have confidence in? And then, of course, Vander Zalm, we didn't know the crap that was going to come out of his mouth after he became premier. And he was smooth. He was like handsome, and his teeth were bright white, and fantasy gardens. I don't think many British Columbians knew that it was a biblical garden.
Mm-hmm.
I think they just thought it was like a Holland to come to Canada with tulips everywhere.
I've got another clip for us, since we talked about her, but we didn't actually show her. Sonia Fursteneau of the Greens, because you said that you were more impressed by her than Rustad. So I figured, well, why not show her speaking? I believe this was part. It's from a Twitter feed called Conversations Live with Stuart McNish. I'm not sure exactly in what context she was asked this, but she seems to be at some public event because there's an audience there.
Don't let me down, Sonia.
We need long-term thinking when it comes to policy, and the role that government plays in that is sending clear signals, being predictable, creating certainty, but most importantly, tending to the things that government is meant to tend to: healthcare, education, infrastructure, affordable housing, transit. Make sure that people here can thrive so that businesses can hire people who are well and thriving and want to be here. There's a lot of work to be done to get BC to the place that it should and can be, but we will not get there by believing stories that no longer make sense. We will not get there by pretending that climate change isn't real. And we will not get there by wishing that we were back in the days of yore when we could export raw resources and that was enough to hold up our economy. It's not.
How can you argue with any of that?
I can't.
And it's very well delivered.
Yeah.
Well, she was a teacher at one time.
Oh, there's the thing. Teachers are not allowed to run in politics anymore. Conservatives have said so.
Yes.
They have a problem with Tim Walz in the States. They've had a problem with Trudeau for the last 9 years. It's like, that's about the worst thing you could put on your resume as a politician these days is teacher.
Or
I always get a
bus
kick
driver.
out of the people that say that. Trudeau was a drama teacher. I said, please, I implore you, tell me what Polyev was before he entered politics.
Nothing.
He was a paper boy, wasn't he?
I don't even think he had a paper route, but I do know this, that Trudeau taught a semester of drama, one semester, filling in for somebody, because he taught math and literature.
Yes.
But they always leave that out, right? They always leave that out.
Well, that would make him sound smart.
Yeah.
Math and literature.
Yeah, Polyev, he basically, right out of high school, he was into politics and in the pocket of the Reform Party, Preston Manning and former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. But the guy you see in the House of Commons day in and day out, I have friends who went to high school with him. They said he's the exact same guy he was in high school. He hasn't changed a bit. Smug, smarmy, know-it-all, I know more than you. A complete, total, and utter narcissist. The man does not want to govern. He wants to rule over us. And that scares the shit out of me.
When I remember my young Liberal days, I remember going, I was in youth parliament for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And 1 year I was in the back benches the opposition benches, and 1 year I was in government. And it was the NDP, the Conservatives, and the Liberals. Didn't have Green in those days. And we partied really well with the NDP and the odd Conservative. But most of those Conservative youth reminded me of Polyev. And Polyev reminds me of them. It was about having policy wonk ideological fights in a dance bar on a Saturday night. And it's like, guys, can we just, we're talking shop here.
Yeah.
And it's all about, you're wrong. And it's like, okay, you may disagree with me, but that doesn't mean that I'm wrong. And I found that there was more of a fluidity in the debate with NDPers than there was with Tories.
Well, and at the time they would have been actual Tories. The Tories don't exist anymore.
No.
They've been gone for 20 years, right? 21 years now, is it?
Yeah. Somebody had said not long ago to me, so the progressive conservatives are going to have a good shot at winning. And I said, there is no progressive conservative party. What party are you referring? Well, the Conservative Party. Well, it's a conservative party, absolutely, but it's not the party of Flora McDonald and Joe Clark,
no,
and Robert Stanfield. It's not that party.
No, it's
Jean
not.
Charest, even.
Yeah.
Conservatism with a heart.
Well, and I say that the Trudeau Liberals today have more in common with Joe Clark's Progressive Conservative Party than he would have had with his father's Liberal Party, and I don't think I'm far off the mark on that one.
Yeah, I mean, his concept of the big tent does include, the right of center crowd for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't include the crowd that when Mr. Rustad speaks of he has a big tent, the joke with people like Keith Baldry and others are like, well, yeah, you have a big tent for a lot of divergent wacko ideas. When you think of big tent, what I traditionally think of is people that, if you're going to take a look at an issue like free trade, there is the far out corporate side of it. There's the far left worker side of it, protect either way. And yet you're still able to find some kind of common ground.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I don't think there's any common ground with the kinds of Polyev conservatives that we have today.
I agree.
They're just.
I agree. That doesn't exist anymore.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Tim. Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, no worries. I just think politics should be fun.
Mm-hmm.
It should be fun. It should be a joyful exercise to see a problem, work with people to solve it, win. Winning means solving the problem. We get bogged down in politics in these 4-year windows, and what the electorate wants. Part of the blame's on the electorate, because what the electorate wants is the problem solved within the 4-year time frame.
It's never enough time.
Some of these problems are like Joe Biden's infrastructure bill. You're going to see the massive benefits of that slowly now, but really you're going to see the benefits in 10 to 15 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and the one thing that we have right now with the opposition party is that they do not want to work for Canadians ever. And I say this because they cannot support a single thing the Liberal Party tables. Not a single one. The last budget, they voted no on every single line item. Every single one.
I don't get that either.
Like, they don't want to work on anything. It's like, I understand you're the opposition and you're supposed to sit in opposition. But, some things you can look at and say, this is a pretty good idea. How about we dot this I, cross that T, and put a comma here, and then that would be more suitable to us. But they don't want to negotiate anything. They want to strike it all down and say no. And that doesn't benefit the country.
Yeah, I mean, in your curriculum for the teaching of the opposition backbenches or the opposition parties, the opposition critics are to be not so much advisors, but guides to the minister responsible for health or whatever. Did you think of it this way? Did you think of it that way? The goal of the opposition constitutionally is to perfect the legislation.
Right.
Is to clean it up, to perfect it, to make it. And then what we're seeing is ideological bents on a lot of that stuff. But there should be no ideological bent on dental care or universal
school
health
lunch program,
school lunch program, or any of that.
Yeah.
And to vote no on, if I was the leader of a national party, I would be thinking of, if I just lost and I became leader of the opposition and I had 4 years, I'd be thinking of, like a game of chess, a number of moves ahead. And I'd be thinking about which bill And I learned this in University Model Parliament, by the way, where you had to find some bills that you can negotiate and work with because you wanted the opposition to support some of your bills.
Right.
And yet there was this quid pro quo, and there was some that we couldn't negotiate on, like abortion was one of them, and we were women's reproductive rights and da da da, and but for the most part, pretty much everything is negotiable, I think. But I heard it from one conservative, I forget who it was. Tolerance and compromise is incompetence, something along those lines. The idea that tolerating things was basically admitting defeat, and I don't understand how saying, yeah, you know what, let's get some dental care for the seniors in this country.
Let's just move the ball forward another 30 feet.
Yeah.
Well, I know that because of COVID, I got quite close to a lot of the staff at the grocery store that I go to. It's a Sobeys, and they are not Sobeys. They work for Sobeys, but they have hearts of gold, these folks, right? These ladies behind the tills. And I'm finding out over the years more and more about a lot of these ladies that they're struggling financially. And they don't know who to blame. And here you have Poilievre saying it's all on Trudeau. And I'm sure that government action has had some say. But it's also the corporation not giving them benefits unless they have over 30 hours. And
nobody gets over 30 hours.
29 hours.
Yeah.
Is that Trudeau doing that? No. That's a corporation doing it. I went to pump gas at Costco the other day, and the clicker wouldn't work on the thing, so I had to pump it without just letting it lock in and then just standing back. And I said to the two attendants, "Is this one broken?" "Yeah, it's the only one of the 12 that's broken, and you got it. We're replacing it tonight." I said, "Yeah, okay, yeah, no worries." And well, your reaction's a bit different than the fellow that was here earlier today. We had to kick him out. And I said, "What do you mean?" "Well, he went up one side and down the other, effing JD, JC. It was Trudeau's fault." The Trudeau government has intentionally made you people take the clips out on the gas pumps.
Yes. Yeah.
And
yeah.
I just
but the problem with that is it's stochastic terrorism when you think about the amount of people across the country who believe all the lies spewed by Skippy on a daily basis. Blaming that, the drug dens, the crime is up, time is up, blah, blah, blah. All the stupid shit he says daily.
Well,
you're going to get the person who believes it, who's going to do something bad.
But it's not only that crime is up, right? Is that he is unleashing crime.
Yes.
It's not only that injection drug use is up or that drug use is up in certain quarters or in certain demographics. It's he's trying to get your children hooked on drugs. It's not, if you'd listen to the narrative, he's the most evil person on the face of this planet.
Yeah.
I just want to know if Poilievre actually loves Canada. I don't know an answer to that.
I don't think he does.
No.
Honestly, I don't think he does. I think he loves the idea of having power and control over people. Because remember what he said, I will work within the law to make sure that my policies are legal. In other words, notwithstanding clause.
Yeah.
All right.
And he tried to, he was one of the spearheads of the anti-elections Canada policies in the Harper government.
Well, he was made the Democratic Reform Minister, and then he presented that Unfair Elections Act that mostly got gutted, and then whatever wasn't gutted was overturned.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Grizzly, you asked about this at the beginning of the show. I wanted to make sure that we do get to it. Because this is the moment in the campaign for me. It's not so much a moment of the campaign, but a moment seems to be really revealing of John Rustad and got my back up. So it seems, and we talked about this on the show, so for those who watch the show, you've probably seen this already, but it bears repeating. Guy Filicella, who's had, I believe, 6 overdoses, and thanks to harm reduction services, is still alive, and now is the father of several children, happily married, an advocate, an activist, bumps into Kevin Rustad on the street, and they have John Rustad. Sorry, I keep on mixing their names, and says that he shared his story of how he was brought back to life 6 times. If supervised consumption sites didn't exist, that he wouldn't have almost 12 years of sobriety today. Showed him pictures of the kids. He seemed humbled by my story, and then he told me he wouldn't close these sites. I believed he was being honest with me, and maybe he was at the time. Now he's calling them drug dens and said he'd shut them. I suspect his handlers pushed them into this because they think it will help him win. What kind of a leader can't stand up for the basic things they believe in? Either he lied to me or he's too weak to stand up for what he really believes. And then I believe Rustad then made some comments that basically said, quote, and this is him saying it, quote, "We have a poisoned drug supply that kills 6 people every day. Tell me where it makes sense not to have both services scaled up right across the country." That was Felicella, and Rustad acknowledged that he had talked to Felicella, and Rustad responded to the press. After the first time, government should have actually stepped in and put him into mandatory treatment and recovery so he didn't overdose 5 more times.
Yeah, he says the system failed him by letting him overdose 6 times.
What do you say about the character of someone who stands there and has a one-on-one sort of discussion with someone on the street and says, I hear your experience, I honor your experience, I've taken it in, and I am not going to close these. And then who knows how many hours later, and goes back and says, yeah, I'm closing them, and it's
no integrity whatsoever.
So he should not have been allowed to overdose. And I mean, I understand the sentiment, because if someone's overdosing, right, that's a painful experience. They probably got there because of other types of pain. You don't want people to be in pain after the first time. Yes, I as a human being, I understand the instinct. Want to rush in, stop it, but that's not how addiction works. Every single little bit of science that we know, all the research that we know on this, and this is not sort of like an 85 or whatnot. Like, this is pretty much all the research that has been done into harm reduction has indicated that it is absolutely, that it works, that it's positive, and that it can't be the only thing. You do need the treatment option. And you can't have the treatment option without the harm reduction. You absolutely need both. You need to intervene at many steps along the way. And most of all, you got to keep people alive long enough to make treatment an option, because dead people do not recover. Like, this is very, very basic. There's not one study anywhere that says the opposite of that. Mm-hmm. And he turns around and says, oh no, the big disservice was letting him go. Nobody let him. Yeah. I'm sure the first time that he had overdosed, that he was presented with options in health, but at some point you got to develop trust. You got like this, or you're just not ready yet. You've got other things going on, right? I mean, for those of us, and I find it hard to believe that there's not one of us in this country that hasn't had one experience, either personally or being someone loving or caring for someone who's been addicted to something.
Yeah. I don't care about being public with this. I quit drinking May 7th, 2023. And what I can tell you is what one thing that stuck out to me more than almost anything else was Rob Lowe saying, no one can quit. No one can quit. If they quit for their partner, their spouse, their children, their job, it's impossible. You cannot quit. You can only quit if you decide. So when it comes to public policy, whatever we can do to keep people alive to the moment they say, you know what, I'm deciding this, that's what we need to do. And it's a difficult thing to confront that demon. It's very hard. Robert Downey Jr., he was asked, it must have been impossible to quit. And he said, no, quitting was easy. What do you mean quitting was easy? You've been in and out of jail, in and out, you almost died. It was the deciding to quit. So I think telling people that we're forcing you into hospitals against your will, does not solve anything in terms of in my view. I mean, if you can get them to go willingly, that's step number one. But back to your question about the integrity of the answer, I just find that so utterly disillusioning, and just why I could never run for politics, because I just don't think I would be telling, if in fact it came from his party handlers, I'd be telling him where to go.
Yeah.
If I honestly believed that gentleman went through what he went through, and you honored his story, and it worked for him, that it could work for others, and that's what you thought at the time, why are you not standing by that? And I look at people that the Republican Party in the States has just crumbled. The integrity factor is gone. It doesn't exist in that part. Lindsey Graham, at one time or another, was actually a fairly decent senator. I mean, is what he is, but he didn't sacrifice his entire soul for one person, and or even just to gain power. I mean, I you know, and it's hard because politicians, it's hard for them to say what's on their mind, because you always have 50% of the population that are going to disagree with you on any given issue, right?
Period.
But I honestly believe that if you say it from a place of sincerity and well-researched, and there goes that researched again, that you can get those independents, you can get those people thinking that are, you know, fringe supporters of other parties. I mean, over the years, I've changed my positions on things because a student argued the case well. And I went, you know what? I'd never thought of that.
Another point of view changes your mind, right? Yeah. No, absolutely.
Absolutely.
As long as the thing is, we need you. I say this to people all the time. You could learn something from this if your mind is open to learning. Not everybody is.
Indeed. All right, I have one final question for you, my good
All
sir.
right.
And it's based on this clip, because the clips that we've shown of Mr. Rustad haven't been particularly flattering or kind. So for a little balance, we're going to show something that the BC Conservative Party created to sort of present him a little bit. And I want you to know that based on your experience of seeing him in public go, because he has been elected since 2005, so he's somewhat of a known quantity, if how it is he wants to be seen lines up with how it is he is.
My name is Kim, and I'm John Rustad's wife. I want you to get to know him like I do. John Rustad is a warm, loyal, and devoted man. After getting married, I was diagnosed with cervical cancer, and then I was told I could not have children. If you've had the joy of watching John around his 6 nieces and nephews, you'd understand the disappointment I had in sharing the news. Not only was John warm and supportive, but our love grew even more. John is a good man. He has always fought to take care of the people around him and to make the world a better place. John believes in the value of hard work. He has worked hard at every job he has ever undertaken, from forestry to firefighting to business to politics. I hope you support him on October 19th.
Now, obviously, an ad featuring his wife, probably the person who knows him best other than his parents, assuming his parents are still alive. Probably not the most unbiased information because, you know, obviously the relationship, but that's the whole point. The point is to humanize him with these types of ads.
Yeah.
Are the values that he definitely seems to show in his family, because there's no reason to assume that his wife is lying here.
Mm-hmm.
Do they translate to his public persona as a politician?
I have a hard time reconciling that with his political views.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mistrust his wife. She seemed quite sincere and quite genuine. It didn't look like it was affected. I'll be honest. He had that was a smile on his face that was genuine. I take issue with who was in the crowd. I don't know if I saw anyone of color, but maybe I wasn't looking hard enough. But to be that man and to want to go into school libraries and select books that are inappropriate and to eliminate soji from our schools and to take away women's reproductive rights, that's incongruous with that commercial, as far as I'm concerned. It makes it, when Jack Nicklaus took out a one-page ad in the 2020 election for Donald Trump, he ceased to be a hero of mine. I mean, this is a man, Jack Nicklaus, who gave his entire life to the game of golf, to charity. He has given millions of dollars away. He's quite a generous human being, and he's gone to the wall for many Americans, and yet he supported Trump twice. And to me, it doesn't work. I don't get how that kind of nice guy who's done all those great things for the game of golf and for charities across the United States, particularly in his home state, can support twice that guy. And that ad is touching, and it's very good. They did a good job. I just don't trust it based on things that he said and policies that he's putting forward.
All right.
Well, let me ask one quick question here before we wrap then, because they want to take books out of school libraries that they deem are inappropriate. In public school libraries in the province of British Columbia, by any chance is the Bible there? The Old Testament? I ask because...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm pretty sure there is. Yeah.
It's pretty offensive if you ask me if you've ever read it. Because that backfired on Ron DeSantis in Florida. They said, we're going to pull these books based on, and they went, incest, rape, murder, blah, 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 blah.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of begetting in that Bible.
Well, somebody pointed that out and said, you got to pull the Bible. I said, no, they go, no. You said if it hits this criteria, and it hit every single one of the criteria that they laid out. So, now they got a little bit of egg on their face because they didn't, the good book, they never actually have read clearly.
But the odd thing is that in history, we associate book burning with totalitarian fascist regimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And the examples are endless. And, it's funny because I said the first to go in history when totalitarian regimes come to power are the educators, the teachers and philosophers. And then I made a TikTok not long ago saying, you know what? It may be, but I also think late night talk show hosts in the U.S. are gone if Trump gets elected.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Colbert commented on that not long ago.
There's a little bit of thin skinism.
A little bit.
Tim,
I was raised to take the 2x4 out of my own eye before I take the splinter out of someone else's.
Right? The beam and the speck.
Sure.
It's just all those things again. I say, it's like judge not lest you shall be judged. Why are you being so damn judgy?
Mm-hmm.
I see your eyes going up and down like a searchlight. Why so judgy? It's just, it's like, if you really are as Christian as you say you are, and if you really do love God as much as you say you do, why do you feel you need to do God's job in God's stead?
Yeah, no kidding.
Whole judgment day that is his or their or hers courtroom.
Yep.
And that we're all going to be on the stand at some point if you believe this. So why are you putting yourself in the judge's chair?
There is no place for the state in
that book. So I just have the feeling that if you read that book, the person who's actually occupying the judge's chair will not take too kindly to that. Move over, Grandpa. I'm doing the judging now.
Rite of passage.
Not sure. There may have been a couple of words that they missed or skipped or omitted there. Just saying. Now, don't take my word for it because I'm a rather lapsed Catholic, but I did go to Catholic school up until grade 8 and Catholic university for the first 3 years. So I have marinated in the waters.
Vocabulary.
Pardon?
You have the vocabulary.
I've marinated in the waters.
There we go.
Let's put it that way. Yes. It's like the Pet Shop Boys song, It's a Sin. They tried to teach me, but it didn't stick. I just had to be me. So,
You did it your way.
I remembered the be kind to others, the part.
Do unto others
Right?
as you should have them do unto you seems to be lost on some folks.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I remembered that part. It's just that whole fire and brimstone for loving someone of the same sex and, pool of eternal damnation and fire part. I decided that part wasn't going to fit well with my story.
I think a lot of people find that in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I like the version of it with the loving, caring God rather than the mean, vengeful one. That sort of fits better with my internal hardwiring. Other people's personal mileage may vary, but
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm a little bit more about the love, and everybody has a seat at my table.
Yeah,
Version. If I were not a lapsed Catholic, that would be the version I would be a little more into.
Hey, Eager Beaver, one last thing. Did you manage to listen to that clip I sent you through email?
I missed it totally.
Okay, so I sent you a clip today that I used AI to make Trump's voice, and I had him say some nice things about me. So check it out.
Oh, wait a minute. I need to. Yes, hold on. Let's hold on. Okay, well, let's chat a little bit. Do you mind if we air it?
No, not at all. Go for it.
Okay. I'm forwarding it forward. I can't. I'm so excited. I'm tripping over my tongue. I'm forwarding it right away to
I
Mr.
hope this
Grizzly,
plays.
not forwarding it. I'm forwarding. It's the French coming out there. In me. So, but as Mr. Grizzly's loading it up, I will thank you so very much for joining us again here at the Beaver Lodge. As exactly as it was the first time, it has been an utter delight, sir.
I've had a blast, and I'm honored to be on your show again here, guys.
Here we go. Listen to this.
I, Donald J. Trump, 45th president, say follow Tim, known as T-Jack, on TikTok. His criticisms of me are spot on. Never a greater critic. The best in the world. Puts Biden and Harris to shame. He has the best words. Bigly, follow T-Jack.
That's pretty good. I like that.
Now, if I get some followers on my TikTok out of this show, I'll be very happy.
Maybe we need to do one of those for the show. I'm Donald Trump, the best political show. Do not think of Beaver. I love myself some Beaver. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. I might get sued.
Well, thanks for playing that. That was gold. That was awesome.
Oh, that's perfect. I love that so much. Yeah, thank you, T-Jack.
Absolutely.
All righty, let's
All right, kids and cubs. That's the
wrap
end
this
of this
puppy up.
episode of the
Oh, man, I've had a
Eager
blast.
Beaver Interview Project. We hope that you love listening to us because we loved making this for you. Remember that sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. It really matters, right? We can't buy the publicity that you give us. If you do not want to miss an episode, you do not have to, thanks to the Ray Girl, because she sponsors our pod page. If you scan that QR code that's appearing just under my chin right here, well, or if you are listening, you go to podpage.com/The True North Eager Beaver, lowercase letters with a hyphen between each one of those words. And when you click on subscribe, we come directly to you. You don't even have to call our name. Don't have to go out on your front porch and say, Beaver.
You can, I guess.
I mean, you can. I won't stop you, but you don't have to. It just slides right into your inbox, and then you can enjoy all the beaver that you want.
I'm leaving that one alone.
And if you would like What? What'd I say?
Nothing.
And if you would like to
Nothing at all.
support us in other ways, then you got to make like Kit Lane and surf yourself on down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page, where we have 3 buttons for you to get freaky with: like, share, subscribe, lick 'em, click 'em, flick 'em. We're gonna get us some happy if you do, and you get our eternal gratitude, which is very, very important. Trust me, it makes your life better. And if you'd like to help us in other ways, well then, let's see, T-Jack says so. You got to scan that other QR code that's by Mr. Grizzly's lovely dome, and that will bring you to our coffee page. And that's where you will find our tip jar, formerly known as the Emergency Hydration Fund. But
No,
there,
keep the show running because I'm unemployed.
but if you happen to have some loonies or some toonies, or maybe even a Laurier weighing you down.
A Borden would be nice. A king. Mackenzie King, because Charles is not on the 20 yet. So a queen or a king or a Borden, any one of them is great.
Hey there, you know.
Even a Laurier.
Yes. But there's where you will find our tip jar. And if you leave us a little something there, it helps us with the production costs. We really appreciate it. We thank you for your support and your generosity. Now, if you're not able to leave anything, hey, that's not a problem whatsoever, because the gift of your attention and the gift of your participation is the one that we cherish the most. And we love to hear from you. So please write to us, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, our Twitter feed @TrueEager, our Facebook page, True North Eager Beaver, or if you happen to be listening on YouTube, right here in our comments section. And if you happen to be listening to us on podcast, especially Apple, leave us some stars and some reviews. It really helps us out a lot. Because democracy is something that you do, well, as you know, there's a provincial election coming up in British Columbia, one in New Brunswick and one in Saskatchewan as well. So please plan your vote. And remember, kids, don't let kids do democracy alone. So bring some friends with you. Very, very, very important. Like this, look fashionable, look busy, be mindful and demure, but vote.
Do the thing that needs to be done. Get out there and vote.
Yes, vote and talk about it. Talk about the fact that you're planning to vote and that you're excited to vote and whatnot, because the best way to get other people excited about voting is for you to be excited about voting.
And let's start writing letters to our MPPs, MLAs, MPs across the country and letting them know we think that election day should be a federal holiday for the federal election and a provincial holiday for a provincial election, because we need to get people out to vote.
With pay.
Well, yeah. Let's make it mandatory and then get some sort of incentive,
Yep.
Yeah.
Tax credit or I don't know.
Yep, exactly. Very important stuff. All right, kids and cubs, could be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself. Mr. Grizzly, do you have some words of wisdom before we go?
I kind of just dropped them a second ago, actually.
All right. T-Jack, do you have some words of wisdom before we go?
Remember that your opponents are human beings and to try and treat them with love and respect as best you can.
Great words.
Show a little grace. Mr. Grizzly, it's time to cue the cock. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music.
Had nothing to do with the questions, but it had nothing to do with sex. I wasn't thinking about sex at all.
But I was.
I thought I'd bring that in because I thought it was
Oh, that's perfect. Yes, Garnet had a little teeny bit of a meltdown. Oh, well, How about them Jays?
I had to. It was just too good not to.
I'm glad you did. That was enjoyable with Tim.
I thought so. It was great. It was a lot of fun. All right, I gotta get going. It's late at night now, and
Yes.
I gotta do some stuff and before I go to bed. So I'll see you.
Good night, everyone, or good morning.